Hello, I'm Sensei Alex Kakuyo. I'd like to welcome you to this episode of The Ordinary Buddhist. The title of today's talk is Pulling Weeds for All Sentient Beings. But before we get into that, I'll remind you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when I post talks in the future. Also, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that'd be great too. So, when I was working and living on organic farms, one of my jobs was to pull weeds. And on an organic farm, part of the organic part of that title is you don't use herbicides or fungicides or pesticides to keep weeds under control. So, apprentices like me had to crawl through the dirt and pull all the weeds by hand. And this was hard work. It wasn't fun. If you can imagine, it's 90 degrees outside and you're covered in dust, and then you're sweating, which irritates the dust and makes your skin itch. It's not enjoyable, but it was necessary because if you allow weeds to take over a plot of land, then they'll rob nutrients from the vegetables you're trying to grow, or they'll crowd them out so they won't grow at all. So it's very important that you pull weeds, and you pull weeds every day. But I noticed something as I was going about this hard work of pulling weeds in the strawberry patch, let's say. And that was, as I pulled weeds, the plants would grow. And then the weeds would grow, and I'd pull those, and the strawberries in this case would grow a little bit bigger and a little bit wider, and they take up more room, and then more weeds would grow, but they wouldn't grow as quickly or as thickly because the strawberries were taking over. And over time, the weeding would get easier. And as long as I kept on top of it and pulled weeds every day, it wasn't that hard to manage. Not saying it was fun, but it wasn't as hard as it was in the beginning because I had developed a routine. More importantly, as long as I maintained this routine, the plants continued to grow until eventually there wasn't enough room for the weeds. And by the end of the summer, I was actually doing very little weeding because the plants had been grown to be big enough and strong enough that they could hold their own, if you will. So what does this have to do with spiritual practice? Well, there is a lot of suffering in the world. This is the first noble truth of Buddhism. And sometimes it can be overwhelming. Social media, the news, it's all full of bad news. Things that are going wrong in our communities, in our country, in the world. And these weeds of negativity can be very tough to deal with. More than that, we have weeds inside of us, or poisons, as Buddha called them, called greed, anger, and ignorance. And sometimes dealing with that can feel overwhelming. But if we approach our spiritual practice in the same way that I approached pulling weeds when I was on the farm, as something we just do every day as a routine, what happens is slowly but surely all that good work builds up. And it creates room for space and for things like compassion and happiness and loving kindness to grow within us and in the world. Until eventually those positive traits get so big and so powerful that they outnumber and outweigh the negative ones. It's not easy work. Sometimes it's downright unpleasant. But it's effective as long as we keep doing it, day after day after day. Because what we're trying to do isn't to eliminate all the negativity, all the suffering in the world all at once. That's impossible. Just like it's impossible to eliminate all the weeds in a strawberry patch all at once. Rather, we just do a little every day. We create space for those positive traits to grow. And eventually, they take over the entire world in the same way that strawberries eventually took over the entire garden. Amitabha.